All right, guys, Wes here. Welcome back to the channel. As you probably already know by now, God of War Ragnarok is one of my favorite God of War games in the entire series. But while I thought it was a great conclusion to the Norse saga, after a couple of playthroughs, it left me with more questions than answers about the future of the series. Ragnarok gave us a ton of answers to God of War 2018, but there's still a ton of unsolved mysteries for both games, like who blew the horn and what is the deal behind the mask that Odin was seeking. God of War Ragnarok teased a lot of stuff for God of War 6, and that's what we're going to talk about today, as well as just the overall future of the God of War series. So get your Leviathan axe and Blades of Chaos ready, and let's dive in. Now, the main question on everyone's mind when it comes to the future of God of War is likely when's it going to release and what kind of gameplay will it have. The classic God of War games helped define the hack and slash genre, while the rebooted series that started with God of War 2018 is a much slower paced narrative driven experience that I'm sure was inspired by games like The Last of Us and even Dark Souls. It's believed that God of War 6 is likely going to feature another complete overhaul of the gameplay, as it's all but explicitly confirmed by Santa Monica Studios that it's going to be another full series refresh. We know the game is going to take us to a brand new setting with a brand new mythology. My personal bet is Egyptian mythology, and while Santa Monica Studios haven't flat out said that the gameplay is also going to be redone, it's rather universally believed that it will be. My hope is that they move past that somewhat linear gameplay style and they treat it more like a semi-open world game, but only time will tell. With the next mainline God of War game, it's very likely that Santa Monica Studios is going to do something completely new that blows everyone away, just like they did with the 2018 refresh, which honestly I'm not entirely sure how they plan on doing that, because the 2018 refresh was a pretty huge overhaul. But if the new game isn't going to be a hack and slash or more akin to the refresh series, what kind of action games will it draw influence from? Some fans have suggested that maybe God of War 6 will be a much larger in scale, similar to the Elden Ring gameplay loop, and definitely not nearly as big of a map. Some have suggested that maybe God of War 6 is going to crank the pace up and be more like Devil May Cry 5, while also pulling influence from the classic hack and slash God of War games, but in more of a new perspective and not quite as absurd as the original games. Now, me personally, I'd love to see God of War 6 be more akin to modern hack and slash titles, but we'll have to wait and see what Santa Monica Studios comes up with. Now let's talk about the story of God of War 6. There's a few popular theories floating around the internet. One suggests that after the events of Ragnarok, the world is going to start seeing Kratos as a savior. This is of course in line with the end of God of War Ragnarok, but it's a role that he probably is not actually cut out for. And the story of God of War 6 might be about him being approached by lesser gods and mortals for help and being sent on a journey to take down various new characters from a new historical mythology in an attempt to stop any of them from getting too powerful and taking Kratos' place as the savior. Kind of sounds like the plot of Dark Souls 1 in a way, but I think it would be pretty interesting to play through something like that from the perspective of a character like Kratos. Now, another popular theory is basically the opposite of the first one, claiming that after Kratos gets teleported into a new area or a new mythology somehow or some way, that the new world's lineup of gods and heroes will see Kratos as a threat after everything that he's done by killing all of the gods he's done in the past, and then basically start a manhunt and attempt to kill him before he possibly decides to go on another rampage. It's also possible that the new lineup of gods will kidnap Atreus, assuming he returns, possibly to torture and study him in an attempt to figure out Kratos' weakness, which would make sense if the two were literally teleported into the new world. But obviously that would just make Kratos even angrier, and it'll also give him a moral justification he needs to start tearing people in half again. Now, there's a third theory that suggests that Atreus is going to be the main character of the next God of War game, possibly in the form of a spin-off set during the Norse timeline, but also possibly as the next mainline installment, making this the first God of War game that doesn't focus on Atreus as the central protagonist. With Kratos aging, it's possible that he retires and we get to see Atreus pick up where Ragnarok left off, as there were a lot of places his story could have gone after the story concluded. It would be a little strange to see Atreus out of the Norse setting, but then again, Kratos made the transition from Greek to Norse just fine, so I have no trouble in believing that Santa Monica Studios can land that transition well enough if that's the direction they choose to go in. I personally don't think it's the case, but again, it's just a story theory. I think if we get anything as Atreus as the main character, it will be a spin-off game in the Norse timeline, and then Kratos will be the focus of God of War 6. Now, there's even one theory floating around that I really like that suggests that there will be multiple pantheons in God of War 6, and the game will jump between various mythologies after all of the deities of the universe form a coalition to take down Kratos. So the rumors about the game being set in Egyptian mythology would technically be true, but there would be other settings and mythologies used as well, because if you play God of War Ragnarok and you've beaten the game and you've seen the various poses that Tyr is making, it's not of just one mythology. I say bring on the God of War multiverse at this point, because besides Spider-Verse, that's the only multiverse that I'd want to see added to the multiverse pile of media. In addition to the mystery of where we're going next in the the God of War franchise, there are some other mysteries that still need solving in the Norse timeline, which kind of backs up the theories that there is going to be some kind of paid expansion or even a spin-off game. I'm guessing the expansion is just copium and we're not going to get that, so I wouldn't even put it on the table, but it's still possible that we get a spin-off so we could finally leave this setting for good. As many of fans pointed out, we still need to know who actually blew the horn of God of War 2018, as Cory Barlog himself confirmed that it was not Kratos. Some believe that Baldur blew the horn, but until we get hard confirmation one way or another from Cory Barlog or someone at Santa Monica Studios, we just won't know for sure, and that's likely not going to happen outside of another game, because otherwise it would have happened already. Santa Monica Studios wanted this big mystery for a reason, so hopefully we get an actual answer to it soon, one way or another, because it's been killing me ever since I finished the first game. Now, there's been a lot of discussion around whether or not the next God of War game will be a mainline installment, as a lot of people have suggested that there's actually an Atreus spin-off in development, which of course would explain why there's been some ominous job listings and interview statements suggesting that there is going to be another Norse-themed God of War game in the near future. A number of cast members have stated in interviews that we haven't seen the last of their characters, and some of you may have heard about the job listing that went up a month ago revealing Santa Monica Studios was looking for gameplay designers who were intimately familiar with God of War Ragnarok's gameplay style, which, if they plan on overhauling the gameplay style of the next God of War game, is not really something that they would need working on a game that was going to be overhauled. It's very possible that the next God of War game focuses on Atreus instead of Kratos, but if that's the case, it's also entirely possible that it's a spin-off set in the Norse timeline, which I really hope answers all of our burning questions before we jump into the new setting and take control of Kratos again. If there's not going to be a Ragnarok expansion or something new, I would absolutely believe that there's a spin-off or something set in the Norse timeline that answers all of the questions. It just makes sense given all of the vague things we've learned recently in regards to the franchise's future. Think about what Insomniac is doing with the Spider-Man series. At the end of the game, there's end credits that have kind of pointed towards the next game in the series, and I'm sure once Spider-Man 2 releases, it's also going to tease something for the upcoming Wolverine game. Now, much of what we know about God of War 6 is thanks to the creative work of Cory Barlog, and it was previously reported that he was working on God of War 6, but it has since been confirmed that he is working on a brand new IP with a sci-fi setting. That means the creative head of the next God of War game or a God of War spin-off will not be him, and it also could mean that he will not be the creative head of the next God of War reboot. So in all likelihood, we could see a pretty drastic change in direction, both in terms of gameplay style and the tone of the story. With a brand new creative lead in charge of the show, God of War 6 could be unlike anything we've ever seen, but on the other hand, Sony and Santa Monica Studios may want to play it safe and promote a new creative head that won't stray too far of what Cory Barlog has accomplished. All we can do at this point is wait and see, but just know that going into God of War 6 that Cory Barlog is seemingly not going to be involved, at least not until he gets his game out. With God of War Ragnarok dominating the 2022 sales charts on the PS5, Sony likely wants to get another installment out in the wild as soon as possible, but I just don't know how optimistic we should all be about the timeline. I don't think Sony is going to want to wait until the next PlayStation console to release another God of War game, but God of War 6 still likely isn't going to come out for another 4 to 5 years at the bare minimum. Ragnarok was in development for a long time, but it was a follow-up to an existing game using old assets. God of War 6 will be a completely new idea and need extra care and time in the oven. I suppose it's possible that it's going to release as a cross-gen game between the PS5 and 6, because there's been some pretty credible rumors claiming that the PS6 is going to launch around 2028, meaning unless God of War 6 gets through development in less than 4 to 5 years, it will be launching very close to the new console. But remember, this actually isn't the first time God of War has really pushed the boundaries of a PlayStation console. The original God of War from 2005 launched just a year and a half before the PlayStation 3, despite being exclusive to the PS2. I mean, heck, God of War 2 launched in March of 2002 as a PS2 exclusive, despite the PS3 launching a few months prior. So God of War 6 being 4 to 5 years away doesn't necessarily mean it will be developed for both the PS5 and the PS6. I have no doubt that it will be playable on the PS6 on launch day, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a very late PS5 exclusive game, because I don't see Santa Monica Studios pushing this game out in the next 4 years, but I could be wrong. As long as they're confident in their product, I trust them with the release date, and I'm sure Sony does as well. I say give them as much time as they need. Until then, we're gonna just keep theorizing and thinking about God of War 6 in the meantime. I really hope we get a spin-off game that kind of buy us some time until God of War 6. But are you excited about the future of the God of War IP? Are you hyped for it? Do you hope it answers the questions that we have? Like, who blew the freaking horn? Cory, please tell us. But yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap it up with this video. If you enjoyed, do me a favor and leave a like, subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.